Right. Well, when the Dodgers came out here, I wouldn't call it on a wing and a prayer, but it was a fairly fast transition. And they had been the National League champions in 1956 and seemingly a fixture in New York. And that's an entirely different story that goes back to Robert Moses, who was the big developer in New York, who basically pushed them out. But in a very short period of time, they go from being the Brooklyn Dodgers to the Los Angeles Dodgers. So they're out here. They decide not to play at Wrigley Field. They decide to play at the Coliseum, which is a football stadium, but it holds 90,000 fans, and so they can make more money, and that was always Walter O'Malley's first order of business. What really saved them was Hollywood and the TV industry, because they held a telethon. Ronald Reagan led this giant telethon. Danny Kaye was part of it, and all the big names of Hollywood. And this is still the Gilded Age of Hollywood, the last vestiges of the studio system. And everybody who was anybody really wanted the Dodgers. And they got behind the team, and they used their name, their panache with this telethon, advertising the team and saying, this is what we need to be a big league city, to make us what we're capable, to complete us. And yes, the team struggled at Dodger Stadium because they were not built for that stadium. In particular, their ace pitcher, they've always been a great pitching team. Their ace pitcher, Don Drysdale, was in the worst stadium he could possibly be in. And he was a high ball pitcher who got a lot of guys to hit medium, shallow fly balls, which at Dodger Stadium were outs. He was a 20-game winner there. They were home runs at the Coliseum, and he despised the place. He almost got run out of town because of his attitude about the Coliseum. But they had other guys like Wally Moon who twisted these pop-up fly balls over the fence. And then other teams would come into town, and they were just flummoxed. When Willie Mays first saw the Coliseum, he just couldn't believe it. And Duke Snider just took one look at him and said, man, they just buried you. So, and that was the same thing with the Duke. He went from being a 40 home run guy to hitting 15 or 16 home runs. So the team really had to struggle and adapt, and I give Walter Alston a lot of credit for figuring out a way to win. Well, in 1959, the Dodgers won the World Series. Really, on a team that was glued together by Walter Alston. They were not a great team, but they somehow managed to win the National League pennant when the Giants collapsed, and then they defeated Chicago, probably a superior club that didn't know what to make of the Coliseum. But that was really the year that Los Angeles went big league. First in May, when Roy Campanella was honored, and 93,000 people came out and lit candles. And that was when they saw that this was really a big league city, because even though he was not a Los Angeles hero, the city adopted him as one of their own. They recognized here was this New York figure who was now a national figure. So the team wins. They win again in 1963. This was a tremendous year for the Dodgers, and probably Vin Scully has always said it was a highlight of their existence. But I tie everything to the year of 1962. 1962 was a fantastic pennant race. It was a tremendous California sports year. USC was national champions of football. The Lakers really made a major run in basketball with Jerry West. And it was an absolutely phenomenal pennant race between the San Francisco Giants and Los Angeles Dodgers. So this is when the rivalry from Los Angeles, from New York, heats up and is bigger than ever in California. It really was. It was different, but anyone who remembers that year would tell you the intensity of the rivalry was as big in '62 as anything that had existed in New York. And it was also an interesting political year. It was the year Richard Nixon lost to Edmund Pat Brown. And there were a lot of interesting dynamics going on at that time. Southern California was considered the conservative area, Northern California the liberal area. And San Francisco had a bit of an inferiority complex because they always lost in this area. But this was when Nixon lost to Brown, and it ties in with this rivalry between the Giants and the Dodgers. And then, as I wrote in my book, after the Giants had defeated the Dodgers, it was like Hannibal crossing the Alps and all of a sudden realizing he still has to break into the gates of Rome because here are the New York Yankees. And so all of this ties together because it's New York and Los Angeles and California, and in 1963 it's the Yankees. And when they beat the Yankees, they were becoming America's team, and they were showing themselves to be a success, not just beating the Chicago White Sox in the World Series, but the mighty Yankees at the height of their prime. And it was a tremendous boost for the city of Los Angeles. And this whole decade, this was the greatest decade in the history of Hollywood movies, without a question of a doubt. And it was a huge decade in politics. The freeways were being built. The population was going up. That was the decade in which Los Angeles passed Chicago as the number 2 population city. And it was all coming together through the building of Dodger Stadium and the success of the team.
What
yeah, I got
it. To Los Angeles.
Yeah. Well, Walter O'Malley, in some ways, is the accidental hero. He was the figure. If you've ever seen It's a Wonderful Life, he was the banker who denies the loans to all the poor Depression-era people. That's actually what he did for a living. He despised the sainted Branch Rickey and hated Jackie Robinson. So there were many things about Walter O'Malley that were not particularly pleasant. Did he have a vision for Los Angeles? Only after he was kicked out of New York, ostensibly because of a failure of vision, which was a stadium in Queens. Mr. Robert Moses was determined that Shea Stadium was going to be the future home of the Dodgers, or whatever it would have been called. But of course, O'Malley insisted on Brooklyn, so he becomes a visionary. And once he came out here, as I said before, he found a city that was open to him and that did not deny him with a lot of regulations, a lot of red tape, and a lot of political yahoo. He found a business-friendly city, and he took advantage of it, and it was a marriage made in heaven. And it worked out. And sure, he was a good, solid owner, and his family took over. Peter O'Malley took over the franchise and really gave it the imprimatur of class that I think Walter wanted the team to have and wanted to be viewed as. And Peter really accomplished that. And that's what the Dodgers were, certainly until they were sold to Fox in 1998. And we'll see whether they can regain that value. People who came out to California to make a name for them. On the East Coast, you were your family. You were, if you were a patrician stock and you had the right connections, you made it on Wall Street. Not so in California. You could fail in the East. You could fail several times, and you just got back up. It was the American dream, and that was exactly what O'Malley saw. That was the self-fulfilling prophecy that was the building of the Dodgers.